I suppose the biggest thing I'm most grateful for in my life is the mercy of God. I was thinking about my life the other day and how I used to live and all the things I've done, and as a supposed Christian, I think to myself, if it wasn't for the mercy of God, I'd be in hell. And I suppose the best way to describe myself before I was a Christian was when Jesus told the story of the Pharisee when he was praying, and he said, "Oh God, I thank you I'm not like the other person. I'm not a sinner, I've not done this, I've not done that." And he had no idea he was just praying to himself and that he wasn't justified before God. And that sort of really summed up my life. I really was a Pharisee. I really thought I was a good man. I thought I was right with God. I thought I was, deserving of his love and his kindness and his goodness and his blessing. That I could do no wrong, and that everything I thought was right and no one could really tell me otherwise, not even God. And I was wise in my own eyes. That's basically what I was, wise in my own eyes. And I grew up, in a sort of Christian home, and considered myself a Christian. I didn't believe in any other gods. I didn't believe in Buddha. I didn't believe in Muhammad. I didn't believe in atheism. I thought it was nonsense. I thought if you believed that, you're an idiot. And basically, I believed, in the God of the Bible, and I thought I was right with God, but only because I said I was, not because I read the Bible and I knew what it meant to be a Christian, only because purely for the fact that I thought I was a Christian. And then throughout my life, I basically lived that way and did my own thing. Watched the movies that I wanted to watch, listened to the music that I wanted to listen to, and I went to church pretty much every Sunday. I was a youth leader. I was fairly involved in the church, especially between about the age of about 16, 17, 18, around there. I was, preaching and leading kids, and supposedly in a Christian way. And basically just a normal person. I wasn't a criminal. I didn't go out and rob people, or I never even got drunk. But I was a really godless person in my heart. But I was very good at keeping that from people. My sin was hidden. No one else really saw it, but I knew what it was. And I was extremely selfish, very arrogant, and very self-centered and full of myself. And because of that, I hurt a lot of people, and all under the name of a Christian. I really hurt a lot of people and justified my sin and justified my ways. I remember one time I was in a hotel, and I was in the bathroom, and I was with my girlfriend at the time. We were going to stay the night there, and she was in the other room, and I raised my fist towards God and I said, "You will not stop me from what I want to do." I said, "I know your Bible, I know I have a free will, and how dare you even think about stopping me?" And I never told anybody that for years. And but that's what I was like when no one saw that. No one saw the times I swore at God when I got home and told him exactly what I thought of him. No one saw the hatred in my heart towards God. They just saw on the outside, like, just a Sunday Christian, basically. And I loved sin. I loved wickedness. I used to listen to the worst kind of music imaginable. The more immoral it was, the better it was for me. The more graphic and violent the movie, the better. I'd be very disappointed if it wasn't violent or graphic, or if it was anything under MA, I wouldn't even bother. But no one really knew that, and because I was very good at acting. And one day, some new people came to church, and it was worship time. And I never met them before. And I remember looking across and I saw this person raising his hands towards God and just worshipping God freely. And I looked at him with utter hatred and just utter self-righteousness. I thought, who does this guy think he is? I never would do anything like that. I was very, refrained. I thought that type of thing, that so-called openness, whatever it was fake. And little did I know that I was the fake, and this person was the genuine person, and who really loved God. My heart was just cold, I just thought, if you did that, you're crazy. And I began to know this person. Started off sort of not really what I wanted. I met his brother. I just remember being in a youth meeting, and there he was sitting next to me, saying, we've got to live for the Lord, we've got to follow God. And I'm looking at this person thinking, who do you think you are? You don't even know me. I don't even know you. I was looking at the youth pastor at the time thinking, what have you got me into? But by the grace of God, we became good friends. And we began to hang out. And then he began to notice something within me that wasn't right. And he began to try to witness to me. And I used to get so offended. And because I thought I was a Christian, I thought I was right with God, and I didn't have anyone dare tell me otherwise. I thought, they had no right to tell me, who I was, what a Christian was. I believed in God, and that was all that there is to it. And if you thought otherwise, I just thought you were an ignorant person. And basically, then I met his brother and became good friends with his brother as well. And they began to really witness to me. And anyway, I remember on the way to a soccer game. I used to play indoor soccer. And there was this preaching on a CD. And I remember the car was full, and I was sitting there, and I began to just stop talking and just began listening to this preacher that I could hear over this, through the speakers. And at first I began to mock him. I thought, this guy's an idiot. He was praying for about 5 minutes, and saying all these these and thous, and it's like really like the crazy stuff that I heard about, the old time Christian sort of thing. And I thought it was madness, but for some reason beyond me, I began to be really drawn to it, and I began to really listen to it. And I asked who it was, and it was Paul Washer talking about the Shocking Youth message, about what true Christianity was. So I was genuinely interested. For some reason, I was really drawn to it. I think at that point in my life, I knew God was chasing me, wanted me to be right with him, and I was running from it. And so I went home and I watched it, and he was talking about what it really meant to be a Christian, about holiness and real love for the God. Not this fake stuff, not this outward appearance, but inside your heart just didn't know God at all. You just lived for yourself. You loved sin. And I remember him saying during his preaching, many of the things you love to do, God hates. Do you realize that? And I remember at that moment, it was as if my whole world just collapsed and my eyes were open, and it's like I looked into a mirror and I really saw what I was. And I realized for the first time that my life was wrong before God, and that I was sinful, and that I was a really sinful person. And for me to see that just shocked me. And I never thought I was sinful. I knew I sinned, I knew I did wrong things, but it never really impacted me. It never really made me think that I'm sinning against God and that what I was doing was wrong and grieving and deserved, hell. And I remember just being totally devastated when I realised I broke God's heart with my life. And I remember when the sermon finished, I just sat there in my room by myself, almost in tears. And I was just like, God, what have I done? What have I done? And I remember just being grieved, and I reckon I went into my room and I just broke down and I said, God, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. I'm a sinner. I'm such a sinner. I'm such a sinful man. And I went along like that for weeks. It just went for weeks. I'll come home. I was like, God, have mercy on me. And all throughout the day, I'd see my sin. I began to remember all the things I've done wrong. I began to really realise my life and how bad it was. And God would bring up things that I did and said to other people, and it really cut me. And the worst thing about it is that everything I did, I knew God saw. And everything I did, I knew really impacted God. And that's what really broke my heart the most, is that I offended a good God. And I reckon for weeks I was like that. Just go home and just cry out for mercy. And I began to read the Bible. I never used to really read the Bible beforehand. It really bored me to tears. I tried it quite a few times. Being a youth leader, you got to try and preach about something. And I began to really read it, and I began to really want to read God's word. But every time I opened up the Bible, I always landed on judgment. And I began to really see that, oh my goodness, I'm going to be judged. And that's what I thought. I was in paranoia, basically. Because I knew I deserved it. I deserved judgment. And I thought that's what I was going to get. And I'd cry out for mercy. And then one day I opened up the Bible and I flicked to the Gospels and the life of Jesus. And for the first time in my life, I was interested in reading it. I especially hated the Gospels before I was a Christian. I couldn't stand listening to the words of Christ. They bored me and I hated it. But now I loved it. And I began to notice something, that what Jesus was doing through the miracles, and I began to see myself as those sick people and God having compassion and delivering them from their sickness. And I began to see that was like me bound in sin, and God had mercy upon me and freed me. And I began to realise something, especially what Jesus said, it really impacted me. He said, I did not come for the well, but I came for the sick. And I saw that me in my sinful state was the very thing that Jesus came to die for. That me as a sinner was, that was the whole point of Jesus dying. Jesus didn't come to die for good people. He came to die for sinful people. And I began to really have hope. I was just like, well, there's hope for me. And I began to almost be just so happy. I was just like, there's hope for me. And I remember just praying to God and said, God, I want to follow you. I want to serve you. I don't want to live the life I lived before. I don't want to grieve you anymore. And I know you came to die for people like me. And God, please forgive me, and I want to follow you. And ever since then, by the grace of God, I've followed him. And I always thank God for his mercy, and I hope that when I'm old, I'm still saying the same thing.